Have you ever felt like an outsider looking in, watching others effortlessly collect friends, fill their weekends with social plans, while you sit alone wondering what's fundamentally wrong with you? You see the photos, the group chats, the easy laughter, and you think maybe there's something broken inside you. Maybe you're just not wired for connection the way normal people are. But what if I told you that having no friends might not be a deficit at all? What if it's actually a sign of something most people will never understand? Today we're going to uncover a psychological truth that will completely change how you see yourself and your solitude. This isn't about consolation or making you feel better about loneliness. This is about revealing what thinkers like Carl Jung, Arthur Schopenhauer, and Friedrich Nietzsche discovered about people who walk alone, and why your lack of friends might actually be evidence of a deeper psychological evolution that most people never reach. We're going to explore why the loneliest people are often the most psychologically advanced, why having no friends can be a sign of extraordinary self-knowledge, and most importantly, how to tell if you're genuinely evolving or if you're actually avoiding something crucial within yourself. Because here's the truth that nobody tells you. Not all solitude is the same. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which kind of alone you are. Before we dive deep into this journey, if you've ever felt misunderstood for preferring solitude, if you've questioned whether something is wrong with you for not having a circle of friends, then this space is for you. Subscribe and join a community of people who think differently, who feel deeply, and who are brave enough to question what society tells them they should be, and leave a comment. Tell me, do you have no friends by choice or by circumstance? Because that distinction matters more than you think. Let's start with the most important question. Why do some people genuinely have no friends? Not just few friends, but none. No one they call when something happens. No one who checks in. No regular plans. Just them, and the world rushing by outside. Society immediately labels this as a problem, something that needs fixing, a sign of social dysfunction, anxiety, depression, or worse. But Carl Jung saw something completely different. Jung understood that human beings are not all wired the same way. He was the first to truly explore what he called the introverted personality structure. But this isn't just about being shy or preferring small gatherings. Jung was talking about something far more fundamental, the direction of psychic energy. For most people, energy flows outward. They are nourished by external stimulation, by voices, by presence, by constant interaction. These are the extroverts, the social ones, the ones who seem to thrive in groups. But there exists another type of human being, one whose energy flows inward. For these people, other people don't recharge them. They drain them. Every social interaction, no matter how pleasant on the surface, costs something. It's like having a battery that can only recharge in solitude. And the more people around, the faster it depletes. This isn't a choice. It's not something you can fix with exposure therapy or positive thinking. It's a fundamental structure of the psyche. Jung said that for the introvert, social interaction forces them to wear what he called the persona, the social mask, the version of yourself you show to the world. And here's what most people don't understand. Wearing that mask is exhausting. Every conversation, every smile, every time you have to explain yourself or make small talk, you're operating from behind a facade. You're not being your true self. You're performing the role of a socially acceptable human being. And after hours of that performance, you need to retreat. Not because you hate people, but because you need to take off the mask and remember who you actually are underneath it. But what happens when someone has no friends at all? Not even one or two close connections. This is where it gets interesting. Because according to Jung, this might be a sign that you're on a very rare psychological journey, one he called individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, not who your parents wanted you to be, not who society expects, not the collection of roles and masks you've accumulated, but your authentic self. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people never individuate. They live their entire lives as a collection of other people's expectations. They have friends because that's what you're supposed to do. They maintain relationships because it's normal. They never stop to ask if these connections actually serve their soul. But someone who has no friends might be unconsciously rejecting all of that. They might be in the painful process of stripping away everything that isn't truly them. And that includes relationships that feel hollow, conversations that feel empty, connections that exist only on the surface. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher, understood this deeply. He said that the person who does not enjoy solitude will not love freedom. He believed that most people surround themselves with others not out of genuine connection, but out of fear. Fear of facing themselves, fear of their own thoughts, fear of the emptiness they might find inside. So they fill their lives with noise, with plans, with friendships that don't require depth. Because depth is terrifying. But if you have no friends, you can't hide behind that noise. You're forced to confront yourself every single day. And that takes a kind of courage most people never develop. Schopenhauer wrote that ordinary people think merely how they shall spend their time. A man of talent tries to use it. Think about that for a moment. Most friendships are about spending time, killing time together, distracting each other from the weight of existence. But someone who walks alone doesn't have that luxury. They have to actually use their time to create, to think, to build something meaningful, because there's no one else there to fill the hours. Now, before you think this is all just intellectual justification for social isolation, let me be very clear. There is a massive difference between chosen solitude and enforced loneliness. Chosen solitude is when you genuinely prefer your own company, when you feel more yourself alone than in any group, when social interaction feels like a performance you have to prepare for, when you can go weeks without talking to anyone and feel perfectly content. This is the individuation Jung spoke of. This is the freedom Schopenhauer described. But enforced loneliness is completely different. This is when you desperately want connection, but can't find it. When you scroll through your phone with no one to call. When weekends stretch out endlessly and you feel that hollow ache inside. When you tell yourself you prefer being alone, but really, you're just afraid of rejection. And here's where most people lie to themselves. They convince themselves they're choosing solitude when really they're just afraid. Afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of being hurt, afraid of not being good enough. So they build walls and call it wisdom. They avoid people and call it enlightenment. Carl Jung understood this trap. He wrote that loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Read that again. The problem isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of real communication. And this is why some people genuinely need no friends, because they've realized that most communication isn't real. Most conversations never touch anything that matters. Most friendships exist on a level so superficial that they feel more alone in a room full of people than they do by themselves. Friedrich Nietzsche took this even further. He believed that the higher a person evolves psychologically and intellectually, the more incompatible they become with average society. He wrote that in individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. Nietzsche saw that most people operate on a herd mentality. They think what everyone else thinks. They value what everyone else values. They never question the underlying assumptions of their culture. And if you're someone who does question those things, if you see through the social games, If you can't pretend that small talk matters, then you become fundamentally incompatible with most people. Not because you think you're better than them, but because you're operating on a completely different wavelength. It's like trying to have a deep conversation while everyone around you is speaking a different language. Eventually, you stop trying. You retreat into your own world. And from the outside, it looks like you have no friends. But from the inside, it feels like you're the only one who's awake in a world of sleepwalkers. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered something profound about human connection. He found that the people who survived the camps weren't the strongest or the most social. They were the people who had a meaning that transcended their circumstances. Frankl wrote that those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. And this applies directly to friendship. If your life has deep meaning, if you're engaged in something that matters to you, then you don't need friends to validate your existence. You're already complete. But if your life feels empty, if you have no purpose or direction, then you desperately need other people to fill that void. You need constant validation, constant distraction, constant proof that you matter. So here's the question you need to ask yourself honestly. Do you have no friends because you're genuinely self-sufficient and engaged in meaningful work? Or do you have no friends because you're avoiding the vulnerability required for real connection? Because your life feels too empty to share with anyone? Because you're afraid that if people really knew you, they'd reject you? This is the shadow side that Jung warned about, the parts of ourselves we don't want to look at. For some people, having no friends is actually a defense mechanism, a way to avoid being truly seen. They tell themselves they're too deep for ordinary friendship, too evolved for small talk, too authentic for fake connections. But really, they're just scared. Scared of intimacy, scared of judgment, scared of being vulnerable enough to let someone in. And the tragedy is, they never discover whether real connection is possible because they never risk it. Erich Fromm, the psychoanalyst and philosopher, wrote extensively about what he called the fear of freedom. He observed that most people are terrified of true autonomy. They want to be told what to do, what to think, how to live. They seek refuge in groups, in ideologies, in relationships that give them identity. But there exists a small percentage of people who can tolerate freedom, who can stand alone without needing external validation, who can form their own values without borrowing them from the crowd. If you genuinely have no friends and you're at peace with that, you might be one of these rare individuals. Fromm would say you've achieved what he called positive freedom, the freedom to be yourself without needing others to complete you. But he also warned about negative freedom, the freedom that comes from isolation, from cutting yourself off not out of strength, but out of fear. The question is, which one are you? Here's how you know. Ask yourself these questions. When you're alone, do you feel expansive or contracted? Do you spend your solitude creating, thinking, growing? Or do you spend it scrolling, numbing, distracting yourself from the emptiness? When you imagine reaching out to someone, do you genuinely not want to, or are you afraid they won't respond? If someone offered you genuine friendship, deep connection with someone who truly understands you, would you embrace it, or would you find reasons to push them away? These questions reveal the truth, because chosen solitude feels like freedom. It feels light, spacious, full of possibility. But defensive isolation feels heavy. It feels like a prison you've built around yourself, and the walls might protect you from pain, but they also protect you from life. Carl Jung spent years of his life in deliberate isolation. After his break with Freud, he withdrew from society and descended into what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. He had no friends during this period, No social life, just him and the depths of his own psyche. But this wasn't avoidance. This was a deliberate journey into the underworld of his own soul. He emerged from those years with the theories that would revolutionize psychology: the collective unconscious, the archetypes, the process of individuation. He needed that solitude to birth something new into the world. But here's what most people miss. Jung eventually came back. He didn't stay isolated forever. Once he'd done the inner work, once he'd integrated his shadow and discovered his true self, he reconnected with the world. He formed new relationships. He taught. He wrote. He engaged. The solitude wasn't permanent. It was a necessary phase, a cocoon stage before transformation. And this is crucial to understand. If you have no friends right now, it might be because you're in your own cocoon phase. You're doing deep internal work that requires you to withdraw from the noise of the world. You're shedding old identities, old patterns, old ways of being that no longer serve you. And that process can't happen in a crowd. It requires silence. It requires solitude. But if you stay in the cocoon forever, you never transform. You never fly. You never discover what you were meant to become. The solitude is supposed to prepare you for something greater, not become a permanent state of hiding. Nietzsche wrote that one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Your solitude might be that chaos, that uncomfortable, lonely, confusing period where nothing makes sense and you don't fit anywhere. But from that chaos, something new can be born, a new version of yourself, a new way of being in the world, new kinds of connections that actually feed your soul instead of draining it. But you have to be willing to eventually emerge, to risk being seen, to offer your authentic self to the world, even knowing it might be rejected. Because here's the final truth, the deepest truth. You don't need many friends. You might not need any friends right now, but you do need the capacity for connection, the ability to be vulnerable, the courage to be truly seen by at least one other human being, even if that person hasn't appeared in your life yet, even if you're walking alone right now. The capacity must remain open, because a life of complete isolation, chosen or not, eventually becomes a kind of death. Not physical death, but soul death. The slow calcification of the heart, the gradual closing off of possibility. And that's not individuation. That's not evolution. That's just fear dressed up in philosophical language. So where does this leave you? If you have no friends, if you walk this world alone, you have a choice to make. You can see your solitude as evidence that something is wrong with you, that you're broken, defective, incapable of normal human connection. Or you can see it as evidence of something deeper, a psychological journey that most people never undertake, a process of individuation that requires you to walk alone for a while. But you must be honest with yourself, brutally honest. Are you alone because you're genuinely self-sufficient? Or because you're afraid? Are you in a necessary cocoon phase of transformation? Or are you hiding from life? The difference matters more than anything, because chosen solitude leads to freedom, to creativity, to a kind of wholeness that most people never achieve. But defensive isolation leads nowhere. It's just a slow fade into irrelevance and regret. Carl Jung offered guidance for this journey. He said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And sometimes, becoming who you truly are requires a period of complete aloneness, where you strip away everything that isn't you, every false friendship, every social obligation, every version of yourself that you perform for others, until all that's left is the raw, authentic core of who you actually are. And that core might be someone who doesn't need friends in the traditional sense. Someone who finds connection through ideas, through creativity, through solitude itself. Or it might be someone who's just been hurt too many times and needs to heal before they can risk connection again. Only you know which one is true. Only you can look into your own shadow and see what's really there. Schopenhauer ended his life surrounded by his books and his thoughts, with no close friends, but seemingly at. Nietzsche went mad in isolation, unable to bear the weight of his own genius and the loneliness it created. Jung found balance, solitude when needed, connection when possible. 3 different paths, 3 different relationships with aloneness. Which path are you on? And more importantly, is it the path you choose or the path you've resigned yourself to? Because resignation is not the same as acceptance. Resignation is giving up. Acceptance is making peace with what is while remaining open to what could be. If you have no friends, accept it. Don't fight it. Don't torture yourself with social media comparisons or force yourself into friendships that feel hollow. But stay open. Open to the possibility that someday someone might understand you. That real connection might exist somewhere, even if you haven't found it yet. Open to the idea that your solitude is preparing you for something, not condemning you to nothing. Stay open to transformation. And in the meantime, use your solitude well. Create something. Think deeply. Read the great thinkers. Develop your talents. Build something meaningful. Because the worst thing you can do is waste your alone time numbing yourself, distracting yourself, waiting for life to begin when someone finally chooses you. Your life is happening now, in this moment, in this solitude. Make it count. Make it matter. Become someone so complete, so engaged, so alive, that if friendship comes, it's a beautiful addition, not a desperate need. Viktor Frankl survived hell on earth by finding meaning in his suffering. You can find meaning in your solitude, not by pretending it doesn't hurt when it does, but by transforming that pain into purpose, into art, into understanding, into a depth of self-knowledge that most people never achieve because they're too busy filling their lives with noise. Perhaps the psychological truth behind having no friends is this. Some people are simply called to walk a different path, a path that winds through dark forests and lonely mountains, where companions are rare and the journey is mostly internal. And on that path, you discover things that crowds never see. You develop strengths that popularity never builds. You become intimate with yourself in a way that constant socializing prevents. But you must walk that path consciously, with your eyes open, knowing why you're alone, choosing it when it serves you, being willing to end it when it doesn't. Because the goal isn't to have no friends. The goal is to be so completely yourself that friendship becomes a choice, not a need. A gift you might accept, not a void you're desperately trying to fill. Jung believed that the fully individuated person doesn't need others to complete them. They're already whole. But from that wholeness, they can form real connections, not codependent relationships where each person is trying to fill a void in the other, but 2 complete people choosing to share their completeness. That's the kind of friendship worth having. And if it doesn't exist in your life right now, that's okay. You're not less than. You're not broken. You might just be in the chrysalis stage, dissolving into chaos so you can reform into something more beautiful than you were before. And that process happens in the dark, alone, with no one watching, no one understanding, no one cheering you on, just you and the truth of who you're becoming. So if you have no friends, if you walk alone, if you've wondered what's wrong with you, perhaps nothing is wrong. Perhaps everything is right. Perhaps you're exactly where you need to be, doing the work that most people will never do, becoming someone that most people will never meet, someone rare, someone real, someone whole. And when you emerge from this solitude, if you emerge, You won't need friends to validate you. You won't need a crowd to prove you matter. You'll simply be complete, authentic, unshakable. And if someone is lucky enough to truly see you, to connect with the real you, then that will be a gift. But it will no longer be a necessity, because you will have discovered the most important friendship of all, the one with yourself.